Hello and welcome to my channel. So in this video, you will learn the rules of writing CSS, and this will enable you to style the HTML element you have on your web page. Let's get started. So the first thing we'll look at is what a CSS syntax is. So what really is a CSS syntax? Well, a CSS syntax refers to the way you would write CSS code in your style sheet. So if I want to style the HTML elements on my web page using CSS, what do I need? Now the two main components you would need to style the elements on your web page are the selector and declarations. So the CSS syntax follows a selector and a declarations rule. Let's look at what each of these mean. Here is an example of a CSS syntax. The first thing we notice is we have a selector. The selector is an H1 element. Now after the selector, we have what we call declarations. The declarations would begin with a declaration block, which is your left curly brace and your right curly brace. So in between your declaration block, you will define your declarations. Let's look at what the selector means first, and then we'll talk about declaration block and your declarations. So what is a selector when it comes to CSS? Now, because in your HTML document, you would have a lot of HTML elements, you would need to select the HTML element you would want to style. So a selector refers to the HTML element you would want to style. So this element can be a paragraph, it can be a heading, it can be a div. Any element in your HTML document that you'd want to style is called the selector. When you specify your selector, what you need next is your declaration block. So what is a declaration block? The declaration block is a curly brace that will contain one or more declarations, and the declarations will be separated by semicolons. So each declaration in your declaration block would include a CSS property name and then their corresponding value. Now the property name and the value is separated by a colon. Let's look at the CSS syntax once again and put the selector and declaration concept together. This is an example of a CSS syntax. Now, we said the two main components you would need to write your CSS is the selector and your declarations. So here, we have selected the H1 element, meaning we want to style the heading 1 element or the heading element. Next, we would have to define our declaration block. The declaration block is the beginning curly brace and the closing curly brace or the right curly brace. Now what goes inside your declaration block? Your declarations. So your declarations would be inside your declaration block. What it means is that what do you want to declare so we could style the HTML element that you have selected. So this is an example of a declaration. We have two declarations here. This is the first one and the second one. The declarations would always be separated by a semicolon. So this semicolon separates the first declaration from the second declaration. Now, each declaration block will have a CSS property name and their corresponding value. So for the first declaration block, what it's saying is that I want to change the color of my selected element, which is my H1, and the value I want to give to this color property is blue. So this will change my heading 1, the color of my heading 1 to blue. Let's look at the next declaration. The property that I want to change is my font size, and the value I want to give to it is 24 pixels. This means that go pick up the heading 1 element, whatever font size that has been assigned to it, change it and assign the value of 24 pixels to it. So these declarations will change my heading 1's color to blue and increase the font size to 24 pixels. Let's look at the next syntax. We said that the CSS rule, you will have a selector and your declaration. Now the declaration would need to be in a declaration block. So let's start with our selector. Which element on our HTML document or on our web page do we want to style? You select that element. I want to style the paragraph element. Great. Now let's declare how we want to change the paragraph element. So we would need a declaration block. Our left curly brace and our right curly brace. Inside our declaration block would make our declarations. You can have more than one declaration in your declaration block. So in this example, we have one declaration block and the next declaration block. If you want to separate a declaration block from the next one, you would have to insert your semicolon. So let's look at our first declaration. In declaring, you need to specify the CSS property that you would want to change, and then you will give it a value. So here, I want to change the color property of my HTML element, and I want to give it a color black. So this would apply a black color to my paragraph element. Next, I want to change the font size of my paragraph element, or I want to style the font size of my paragraph element, and the value I want to give to this font size is 14 pixels. So what have we learned in this lesson? Well, a CSS syntax is how we would write our CSS code so we can style the elements on our web page. Now you need two key components in your CSS code to style any HTML element. You will need the selector and declarations. What is the selector? The selector would point to the HTML element you'd want to style. So any HTML element you'd want to style needs to be at the selector point. Then you move on to a declaration block. In that declaration block, you would make your declarations. The declarations are the rules or what you'd want to apply to the selected element to style it. So the declaration will consist of a property name and the value. Now there are different CSS property names that you come across during this lesson, and then the corresponding value you need to use. But for now, just keep in mind that in your declaration, you will need a property name and a value. If you can have more than one declaration in a declaration block. To do that, you separate each declaration with a semicolon, and the next declaration will have the CSS property name and the corresponding value. So this brings us to the end of our lesson on CSS syntax. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your comment, and I would love to hear what you think about my lesson today. Please drop a comment, leave a like, or subscribe to my channel, and let's keep coding.